Strap in and be prepared.
Maybe I'll learn from your failures.
That is what you could do.
Yeah.
Interesting guests.
Kelly Graves, Mike Parker, Josh Pate, George Reiser, Ryan Lee, Yogi Roth, who said that Justin and I are smart.
Sharp opinions.
I think Dan Lanning sitting in his office going, you know what, fine, give us the toughest road to win the national championship. That's what it should be.
Oregon State in their baseball program is still operating from a position of strength, even if they're independent. But here they are in the College World Series.
And some smiles.
It's iconic.
We're not keeping score, but maybe we're keeping score.
The fastest 60 minutes in sports is on the air. It's Danny Havel.
When I wake up every morning, I say to myself, what can I do to make Baby J's life better today?
Justin Grossweiner.
Have I ever told you, Danny, that growing up I really loved ducks?
Danny and Justin starts now on Fox Sports Eugene and Newport. Sitting in for Danny today, it's Goose, Steve Mims.
Welcome into the Danny and Justin Show, live from the Bigfoot Beverages studios in Eugene and Newport. The Danny and Justin Show extending a 2-day run here in the chair. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny, and the news has come down that by popular demand it has been extended through the weekend. I'll be back on Monday, so right in the middle smack dab of a 3-day run, but we're going to take you into the weekend today. Justin, thanks for having me back on.
I'm excited to have you back today and for Monday because it means we can talk about what's going to happen in the NBA Finals, both preview it and talk about it in post because, wow, we both thought that it was going to end yesterday. I think a lot of people did. And, we were wrong.
And as two men suffering from pulled calves, I think it's safe to say we were both very impressed with Tyrese Haliburton's looks much more athletic with a pulled calf than I look without, much less with.
I know. You talked yesterday about the treatment that he probably gets is much more
I bet
advanced.
It's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, probably pretty good because, man, he looked pretty healthy out there. Certainly a lot more healthy than he looked in Game 5. But like you said, we're suffering through those injuries ourselves, so we can certainly relate.
Yeah, we need maybe some professional medical staffs to maybe they just got like one of those shots that basically just numbs it for 3 hours, and then you got to spend the next 24 kind of recovering from that. But
right.
I would like some of those NBA cold tubs, massages, and whatever they shoot up in those things to clear it out. So as I said, I sat out. My Cal Ripken streak of softball ended last night. I sat and watched my team win, but the Cavs feel a bit better today, so hoping to be out there by next week. A less noticeable limp, I believe, today.
That's good. I didn't see you walk in too much, but it feels like this Tyrese Haliburton story is going to be one of those 15 years from now. They'll be like, how did you play in that game, actually? Like, what's the real story? What did they shoot you up with?
Yeah,
you know
and then we get the opposite where people say, yeah, it was never, it's the Kurt Schilling bloody sock, right? Where then people go, oh, no, he just put some tie-dye on there.
Yeah, exactly.
That,
never was as big of a deal as people made it out to be.
I'm sure the folks in Oklahoma City right now are questioning whether or not he really did pull it or if it's, that's,
there was
that's
all
what
ruse.
happens. That's what happens in the lore of sports history. Once somebody overcomes a crazy injury, the other side just says, well, maybe he was making that thing up. So. All right, so a Friday of the Danny and Justin Show. We have a special guest coming in studio today. We have the third chair in the Bigfoot Beverages studios, and that is for Jacob Archer. Archer is the voice of the Eugene Emeralds, who are right in the middle of a homestand. They're at home tonight against Vancouver as they kick off the second half of the Northwest League schedule. So we'll get a chance to kind of review half one with Jacob, look ahead to half two, talk about some roster changes that have been had, some front office changes, but a lot of changes for the M's in the last few weeks. So we appreciate Jacob coming in and popping in to kind of update us on what's going on with them.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting, too, because they were in the middle of that Rafael Devers trade as well. James Tibbs heading out of the Emeralds and from their organization, from the Giants to the Red Sox. So I think it's a really interesting time to talk to them.
Yeah, no doubt. And like you say, it's an interesting league because they do the two halves to where, as of today, the Emeralds are 0-0. I mean, you just play two straight halves, and the winner of the first half goes to the playoff, and the winner of the second half. So I always liked it because it's a league that obviously in minor league, you get players going up and down. Your roster can look a lot different by now than it did in the first part. So it gives you a chance to kind of reset. So Everett won their division in the first half, and now Hillsborough, Eugene, and Vancouver, and the rest will have a chance to take the second. But so it's kind of fun. And when I covered that team for 20-plus years, it was always kind of like, right in the middle of summer, all right, we'll take a break, and now we can kind of start over, and it makes it more fun to cover the team, too, because if they're 5 games out, heading down the road, you're like, oh, this is going to be a long September, long August, but instead you're kind of 0-0 starts up. So we will look forward to having Jacob Archer in here to get us going with that one there. Speaking of baseball, I know your Cubs are playing right now. They were down to the Mariners. Are they still trailing? I know it was 6-4.
It was 6-4. Kyle Riley hit his second home run, so he now has, I believe it's 30. It's not the same score, but it is not much better. It is now 9-4 in the top of the ninth inning, 2 outs, so the Cubs will get an opportunity. Down 5 runs, but Kyle Riley, what a season for him. I mean, you talk about a guy that, I look at his stats kind of recently, and just he was never even close to this as a hitter in his career. And by the way, I think he's like 30 years old. It's not like he's some young guy. All of a sudden, he just comes out and has this phenomenal season. So it's pretty exciting for Seattle.
I was going to say, in an Aaron Judge-less world, we could be looking at this being the MVP,
I know, right?
An MVP battle, Cal Raleigh versus PCA.
Right.
Pete Crow Armstrong's putting up some numbers that, I guess if you were to say the 2 most surprising players this year, it'd probably be Raleigh in the American League and Pete Crow Armstrong in the National League. And both of them have had a good series so far.
Well, I'm just as surprised about PCA as anyone. And I've been following PCA since the Cubs traded for him for my favorite player, basically, Javi Baez. So I was pretty pissed about that when that happened. So I've had to eat some crow since then about that trade. But he certainly has been incredible. And it's not just the hitting numbers, it's about what he does in the field. He had an 8th inning the other day where he had this incredible catch that they had on StatCast as a 5% catch probability, and then 5 minutes of real life time later, he had a first pitch home run in the bottom of the 8th inning. So just an exciting player. And if you would have told me before the season, you said, hey, he's going to get 20 home runs this entire season, I would have been like, yes, absolutely awesome. If he's a league average hitter, he's super incredibly valuable. And so for him to be possible, 40-40 maybe? I mean, that's like not out of the question.
And the best defensive center fielder in the game, and perhaps the fastest player in the game.
One of the most exciting guys they've had since a guy that came back today to Wrigley Field for the first time in 20 years, Sammy Sosa, who's somebody that I would say was one of my first childhood sports heroes.
What was it like for you? I know you were watching today. What was it like for you to see his... So had that just been something where he hadn't come back, he hadn't been welcomed back, or he hadn't wanted to come back? Today was the big day? I
apparently had kept it hidden until pretty recently, and it kind of got leaked beforehand. But I think the biggest thing was once the new Cubs ownership took over, Tom Ricketts, the chairman of the Cubs, had some comments about basically something along the lines of that he really wasn't welcome back until he kind of admitted he did steroids. And so I think that sort of left a bad taste in both parties' mouths for a little bit. And I think that was prior to the World Series, maybe sometime around then. But I think that was sort of a lot of it, was that there were some tensions between Cubs ownership and him, and just the way that kind of blowed over, I guess, at some point, and now he's welcome back, I guess. So they didn't, roll out the red carpet in terms of making this like whole big deal until today or anything like that. He went to CubsCon, I think that was last year maybe, or maybe it was this year, I don't remember. But that was a big deal when he came to CubsCon for the first time and made an appearance kind of as a Cub for the first time in a while. But it was really cool, honestly. And he looked a little bit, a little camera shy, I have to say, in the booth. But honestly, it was just really interesting to see him back. And it's a player that I think has been a little lost maybe in MLB history just because of the whole steroid thing. But the home run race between him and McGuire, I think, was so important in baseball. And he was so exciting. So to have him back and actually get recognized by the fans is something I think was really important. He got a huge ovation, and he talked about, this is, I remember this moment and stuff like that. So it was a cool full circle moment as a Cubs fan, but I think it was important for baseball, too, to have a player that was really important for the league kind of be more aligned again with their former organization. Yeah,
and him and the Cubs. I went to Wrigley, and I think it was 2003. Me and my buddy Jason Quick, who people know as a sports writer up at The Athletic, went in about 2003. 2 of us went out there for 3 games, and for one of the games we had right field bleachers, and Sammy was there. And it was a scene, man. I mean, he was as popular at that time as any. Fans would yell, and he'd wave to fans up there.
He was a superstar.
He would throw balls up in the bleachers, to the fans afterwards. He was as beloved as any player then there. So I'm glad that even if there were some ups and downs since, that he's come back there, because like I say, I know that there's been some rough parts in that, but if you could go back to that summer, and I would, this is probably 2 years after the McGuire deal, but if you could go back to that summer of 2003, which was the Bartman year, but that summer he was everything at Wrigley Field. So
by the way,
back there.
Just to age myself and give you kind of a fun story here. So I was 8 at the time. I was living in Florida. So I actually went to Game 5 of the National League Championship Series, which was the game before the Steve Bartman incident.
Well, so you could have been Bartman.
I was not that close, to be fair, but I remember I saw a game where the Cubs could have won, and if they would have won, they would have gone to the World Series.
Yeah.
And they lost. Carlos Zambrano didn't have a great start, and then of course they lost in Game 6 and 7, which my uncle went to, and my uncle turned off the end of Game 7 of the 2016 World Series because he had flashbacks to when he was in person in 2003 when they lost at home, and so it just like couldn't stand it anymore. So, anyways,
yeah. Before we leave PC, I have to say my favorite part about the Pete Crow Armstrong story is that his mother was the mother, and she was an actress who was the mother in the movie Little Big Leaguer, and then she ends up having her own Little Big Leaguer. I think is an incredible tie-in on the Pete Crow Armstrong.
Yeah, he's definitely has some famous parents.
Yes, he's got
sure.
He's got some Hollywood in him.
Exactly, and he's certainly a Hollywood type player.
Yeah, he's got the blue hair out there, at least early in the year did. So. That was cool there. Moving into some college football, interesting story came out today. I know Gottlieb was just talking about it, but this could be a landmark deal where we've seen where Wisconsin is suing Miami, basically claiming that Wisconsin saying they had an NIL deal with a player, a 2-year contract, and Miami comes in and basically, which happens in college football all the time, tampered a little bit and got the guy to come here. And normally it just kind of goes away, but Wisconsin's not going to let it go easily. And this could really be a landmark deal. If we find that there's any sort of a ruling against Miami and Miami has any sort of sanctions, suddenly it's going to put the impetus on coaches to be pretty careful if they're, reaching out to guys who either have signed with another team or even have committed. We could start to see this become a little bit more of a deal.
For sure. And I think that part of the deal is that they are going to basically examine whether or not a college athlete will basically be retained to the part of their contract that enforces whether they're going to play for that team, whether they're a worker for the university or not, because they're technically not university employees.
Correct.
So that's, I think, the whole interesting thing about it. It sounds like they had a staff member from Miami and a prominent alumnus is what the way it's worded here, met with him in his home after he had signed a 2-year contract pretty recently. And I guess part of the contract is basically saying, hey, you can't go play for another school. And so Wisconsin is essentially arguing that he knowingly broke the terms of that contract to go sign with Miami. So I do think it's interesting. It sounds like the Big Ten has backed Wisconsin's decision to file the lawsuit as well. So it seems like this is going to be another turning point in terms of the way things are going to work in college football, and whatever is enforced, I'm sure, will not be enforced very well by the NCAA.
I can think of a prominent Miami alum who is also a prominent staffer.
Yeah.
And who might have lived in Eugene for a couple years,
there's
too.
There's
anyway,
connection
not
there.
pointing any names, but there could be a few of those. But anyway, so yeah, I think that'd be fascinating because, again, these players have wanted, the right, hey, we're going to pay you, but there are contracts to go. It's like I've heard people say, do these players realize that they're being taxed on this money? It's like everybody wants the money. Hey, give it to me. But to realize to get it that you do sign a contract, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see, is that a breach of contract type situation? And obviously they're paying taxes on this stuff too, I assume. So there are some things that come. It sounds great. Hey, we're getting paid, but there are some. Once you start getting into that and into contract type stuff, there are some things that are going to follow you. So it'll be interesting to see where that turns out. Because like I say, if this works out against Miami, you're because there's tampering that goes on. I mean, let's face it. Anytime somebody's in the portal,
sure,
even before the game, when we see these guys that go into the portal with a do not disturb tag, that means they've already figured out where they're going. You got a pretty good idea that. Somebody talked to them a little bit beforehand. If suddenly that looks like, hey, we could get a bowl ban or we could have a scholarship loss type thing, it would certainly put an impetus on teams that might put a little bit more fear into them than right now what is basically the toothless NC2A.
And it's not even just the NCAA.
Yeah,
think about
this
other
is beyond
sports.
the NC2A
No,
now.
totally. I was just thinking about the NBA, and they had, I think the Pelicans and the Bulls have been tagged recently. But what happens is they get hit with a second-round pick loss or something like that. So the tampering thing, I know that I was watching this really interesting podcast from a former, I don't remember his name, but he was a former GM for the Florida Marlins, and he was talking about interacting with Scott Boras and dealing with his clients.
David Sampson, I think.
Maybe. Yeah. And he was telling me, or not me personally, but he was saying to his audience about how tampering is just so rampant in Major League Baseball that like Scott Boras would contact him and in the middle of the season when you're not allowed to talk, and he would say, like, hey, like, you'd be interested, basically, in my client, and he'd get a list of teams that were interested, and that's kind of how the conversations would start. So I think tampering is one of those things where it's really, really, I don't want to say arbitrary, but it just feels very arbitrary when it's punished. And I kind of wonder why Wisconsin decided that this was the line in the sand and that this is the reason, this player in particular and this situation is one that they needed to actually press a lawsuit onto.
Yeah, it's probably an idea that Wisconsin's kind of, they're not typically getting the 4 and the 5 stars.
No.
They've been more of the Oregon State type that kind of does more with a little bit less. And maybe they just said, look, we're tired of Miami coming in and just doing this with their their style. And so,
Wisconsin recruits really well in state. They always
do.
have
and they don't go down
linemen.
to Florida much. And they pulled this guy to Florida, and then a year, 6 months later, he's on his way. It probably ticked him off, and they decided, hey. And I saw, like you say, the Big Ten came out and supported him. So this is going to be fascinating because, like I say, and again, this shows how toothless the NC2A is. I mean, you can't even go. In a real world, you'd go to your next higher up would be the NC2A and say, hey, will you guys investigate this?
Exactly.
So
that just doesn't
we know
exist.
the NC2A is not going to do anything, so we got to go into the courts for this type thing here. So
I know, and that's where it's so interesting in college football right now because it really feels like the Wild West compared to these professional sports leagues. But I'm not sure how they can, without umbrella organization, I don't know how they're able to manage all this stuff.
Yeah, they're going to go to the courts with it. So we are going to get into some more college football in segment 3. Yesterday we talked about a recruit that got away from Oregon, but then later it always seems to happen after we go off the air and big news happens. Oregon got one, and then there was some news today on Rob Mullins getting an extension that I'll talk a bit about. But before we go to our first break, since I'm going to be in here Monday, I think we should make our NBA Finals Game 7 predictions to go over them. We both whiffed mightily yesterday.
Whiffed mightily, yes.
You give me yours first, and then I'll give you mine, and we'll see who's right on Monday.
I'm just going to go with the Pacers. I'm just tired of betting against them at this point. If I'm wrong and the Thunder win, which they should, and they should have basically, on paper, have won this series in a gentleman's sweep is what I was expecting, maybe in Game 5. But at this point, with what the Pacers have done, and there's some magic there. And at a certain point, I always say this, we think we have things figured out. We always basically are like, well, this is about to happen. And we're always wrong. And I would still, in my heart, lean that I think the Thunder are going to win, which is why I'm going against my heart. I'm going to say that my brain is telling me, for some reason, that I think the Pacers are going to take this one. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know why. I don't know how this is happening, but I'm just going to take the Pacers.
All right, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to say that form finally fills in.
It should.
I think, it should be a raucous home crowd. They're seeking
a nervous one, though.
Yeah, a nervous one, and I think a nervous team too. If suddenly they fall behind, this is a team 68 wins in the regular season all year long. It's been. They are the team to get it. Even coming into this, they were like the highest odds in 15 years to win it.
Super easy favorite.
And they look like this, and people are talking this dynasty. They look like they could win 4 more. If suddenly they don't win this one, then next year becomes, oh boy, now they got to get. Then
they become the team that can't get over the hump.
Yeah,
and you don't ever want to be that team because it's
Exactly.
all mental, right? And it's just becomes one of those. It's like the Cubs winning the World Series. All of a sudden, obviously, the second year of a team put together is different, but you know what I'm saying? It just becomes a big hurdle then.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that you're right. I think if this thing gets into the third quarter and it's close, it does become a little nerve-wracking, and
the crowd is going to be all nervous.
I think SGA can get through it, but I wonder on Holmgren looks like a guy who he's had some moments where he hasn't come through, and Jalen Williams was great when they were up, but not as good last night. So I'll be fascinated to see. Like I said, I feel like the crowd and the Thunder's had, they've had it was something like 6 of their 8 first home playoff wins were by 30. They've blown some people away. So if I'm going to take the Thunder, in fact, I'm going to say it's a blowout. I'm going to say they jump them early and they win by 30 because I think you're right. If this thing's close, I think they start getting a little scared and Indy sort of starts to feel like, hey, we're finally made it to the point here. So I'll take the Thunder in a blowout on Sunday.
I've got 2 keys here. I really think these are the 2 keys because Game 7s. They're usually not well-played games in terms of shooting and stuff like that. In Game 6, nobody on the Thunder individually had more than 6 rebounds. That was Chet Holmgren. He had 6, and nobody else had more than 5. A few players had 4. Indiana, I don't know how they're doing this, but Indiana out-rebounded the Thunder.
Yeah.
And they also won the turnover battle. So those 2 things, if you can win the turnover battle, you can win the rebounding battle, you're going to win the game.
Yep. No, I'm with you. All right, well, we'll find out who was right on Monday. Okay, like I say, when we get for our third segment, we're going to delve in. So if you want more info on the Jet Washington signing, the Rob Mullins extension, we'll get into that in segment 3. But coming up next, we're going to have an in-studio guest. It is Jacob Archer. He is the voice of your Eugene Emeralds, who are home tonight. We'll talk about the wrap-up of the first half and the start of the second half. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny. You're listening to the Danny and Justin Show on Fox Sports, Eugene and Newport. Yeah. Welcome back into the Danny and Justin Show on Fox Sports, Eugene and Newport, and welcome to all of our listeners in Newport. We are wrapping up week 1 on the Central Oregon coast, and glad to have everybody there as Justin rams himself into a microphone. So we are
sorry about that.
Back live here. It's live radio at its best right here, and we have a special guest we are bringing on with us. I'm going to tell you right now, Justin, I've been saying for the last few years, we have got to get that Dompe guy off the air. His voice is just like nails on the chalkboard. He's had his run. Can we please get rid of him? And finally, we got Matt Dompe off the air. They kicked him upstairs to be the general manager and replaced him with Jacob Archer, who joins us. So, Jacob, first off, congratulations on taking the job on a full-time basis. And you can tell Matt I said that as well.
Oh, absolutely. I'll let him know as soon as I'm back or I'll call him even on the drive home. But yeah, thank you guys for having me here today.
Yeah, thanks for popping in. It's today should be a day off because it's between first half and second half. I was saying how I love the Northwest League, how you basically can clear the slate. So it's an exciting time for the M's. You're 0-0 and back into a pennant race for the rest of the regular season.
Yeah, haven't lost a game in the half is what we were saying here in the office today. But I mean, especially now going to full season with you play 132 games, so many roster moves. You have the draft coming up. It's a good way to break it up because you do see right now this time of year and then post-draft here in the next couple of weeks. You see so much movement, so it kind of allows teams to, maybe if you didn't have a great first half, you can still be in contention if you build out a good team for the final couple months.
Yeah, no, I agree, especially like I say, this league's always been, even in the old days when the draft was in June, it's still, guys were playing in the College World Series, they weren't getting there, so I've loved the way we've done that. M's went 32-34 in the first half, 5 games back of Everett, which won it. Everett and Vancouver, who tied for first. You guys were in 4th place. Feel like this is a good reset. I know you guys have been playing pretty well. Feel like the second half you guys have a chance to kind of make a run at some of those other teams?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even a few weeks ago, heading into that series last week, they were just a single game out of that first half title race. So they were right there. They dropped a couple of tough games in a row. So even though they finished 5 games out, like I said, going into I think last Saturday, they were within a game of it. So you just have to kind of have that reset. And like you said, there's no break in between the first half or second half. So it's you finished out yesterday, and now normally you might have a few days off, but you're playing again tonight. And this game now is just as important as the last game of the year in that trying to get back to the Northwest League Championship.
Yeah, no, it'll be a good one out there, and we're just asking the rain to go away here a little bit. Also, interesting win, and this has happened a few times. I can remember my decades covering the M's, where you guys were part of a major league trade that trickled down into this level, and one of your best players, best prospect on the team, James Tibbs III, ends up being part of the Rafael Devers trade. So that was an interesting one for you guys to get to know him. And then suddenly walk in one day and he's on his way to the Red Sox. So that's a little change for you guys.
It was a weird moment on Sunday. So we were actually at Hillsboro. It's the top of the 9th inning where we were down 4-0. First couple guys get on base. Tibbs was the second guy to reach. A few pitches later, he gets pinch ran for. It's like, this is kind of weird. This is kind of weird. It's coming down to the wire in the half. They needed that win to stay alive. So you're like, all right, they're going to do everything they can here in this 9th inning. But usually when you have the pinch runner, it's the game tying run, the go ahead run. You're like, they're still down 4. They only have 2 on base right now. And about maybe a minute or 2 later, I get either a Bleacher Report or some ESPN notification. Breaking news: Rafael Devers traded to the Giants. And I was like, this is really fascinating right now. So I open it up, I'm like, are some of these guys like going right or what's happening? But it's always like the major league guys that come through first. It's always the prospects 10, 15 minutes later. So I'm sitting there and kind of like, calling the game, and I'm also just checking on the dugout, looking over at him like, what is he a part of this? Yeah. And then the game wraps up. They ended up losing the ball game. And I throw it to commercial. I look down there, handshakes, hugs, and I'm like, oh my goodness, he just got pulled from this game as a part of this trade. But I was still checking, Twitter or X, and his name wasn't out there just yet. It took actually till I got off air, so I didn't want to say anything, because you don't know for sure. But I mean, he's taking pictures, he's hugging guys, handshaking guys. But I'm like, I could get the scoop on this, but obviously I'm not going to do that. But no, he was a great representation of the Emeralds and the Giants, and had a chance to even chat with him a little bit after the game. He was going basically coach to coach, person to person, thanking them and giving them a handshake, and he was a great representation of this team, and obviously wishing nothing but the best for him over in Boston.
First round pick from Florida State, so he was kind of the main prospect that went in the deal. Harrison's kind of already been in the majors and a former Emerald as well.
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Goes over there. It's interesting so I wasn't covering team yet in 96, but some friends of mine worked there, and in 96 they had their best year and they go in the playoffs, and the major league trade deadline then was as now August 31st, and their best hitter was a guy named Corey Pointer. Corey Pointer is the throw-in in a Denny Nagel trade. I don't remember the name. Denny Nagel was a pitcher. Pirates trade him to the Braves, and Pointer goes, and it throws off the whole M season. They were leading it. They get in the playoffs without their middle of the guy. And I talked to guys who were on the 96 staff who were still like, nobody ever heard of Corey Pointer, but us M's folks, we all know that the Corey Pointer trade was a thing. So at least for you guys, the trade happens now rather than being something, you can kind of start over with a new lineup in there now.
Yeah, like we talked about with the half resetting. And they had a few days, so I mean, the last few days it has been a lot of roster moves and shake up, because that's obviously, you don't just feel it here in Eugene. It's an entire organizational trade. They have to replace a few guys at the big league level, which AAA needs guys, AA, and it's just that trickle up effect. And you're still even seeing guys getting added to the roster and moved around, just kind of trying to shuffle things together. Because obviously it's only it's 2 prospects, it's 2 big leaguers, but it always is a few days delayed at the high A level down. Where you're starting to see that trickle down effect, and just continuing to kind of retool them as well for the second half.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen, since Tibbs became kind of the centerpiece of the trade, that your voice, I mean, I've been seeing you kind of like everywhere now on some of these calls about blah, blah, blah. So have you been seeing that too? Yeah,
it was funny when he got traded. I had that thought too. I was like, I wonder if Boston's going to tweet out some Emeralds clips. But it ended up being the clip that these outlets had used. They all kind of will find one and they all run with it.
Right.
And it was when we were wearing Oat Milker jerseys, not even our Adams jerseys and whatnot. So, but still, it is definitely always cool to see your calls and clips kind of just popping up randomly, different accounts on X that you have never heard of, or a big MLB one. You're like, it's kind of cool.
You kind of track that of like, this is kind of the best, most known account that I've been on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely just check, and it's more so because I'll just go back and listen and be like, I shouldn't have said that, or I should have done that. Because you're like, you just obviously never know when it's going to be that one play that is the play that is, posted on ESPN or on some MLB prospecting account or whatever. So it's just trying to
MLB Cut 4.
Yeah, exactly. Like trying to just always be on it. But there's definitely been a few where I'm like, I wish that wasn't the one.
We are joined here by, excuse me on there, Jacob Archer, who is the voice of the Eugene Emeralds. You've been on the road games, now the full-time one. There is a long line of great Emeralds broadcasters. One, you may not know this, is friend of the program, Mike Parker, got his start as a voice of the Emeralds back in the 1980s. Ray Martin was a long-time one. Chris Fisher was an announcer in the 90s, who is now, I believe, the TV voice of the Oklahoma City Thunder. As I mentioned, Matt Dompe obviously did it for a long time and is now the general manager. So it's been a long run, but congratulations to you on grabbing that. You guys are at home this weekend. It's Vancouver, right? Mm-hmm. Like I say, this rain's going to go away. We're going to be fine. You guys have some drone shows. What is that post game? What's kind of going on with the drone shows this weekend?
So again, you plan all off season. We're in the off season. Basically the season ends and we're planning for 7-8 months for the year. So it's like, all right, we're looking at this week. The first week after college graduation. A lot of schools are out. It's kind of that first official true week of summer during this week here in June. So we have 2 post-game drone shows, one here tonight on a Bill Walton Merry Pranksters basketball jersey giveaway, which is just incredible. And then tomorrow night is a Mickey Mouse and Friends night with the post-game drone show. But again, you're thinking, all right, we're definitely out of weather. We're good. We're clear. And then
June
we pulled up the
looks good for this.
It's supposed to just be raining all weekend. But no, they're great. And we're obviously in communications with them. And they said as long as people, though their policy is, if people are willing to sit in the rain and watch, they can keep it going. So it would take a lot for anything. I mean, we're also on turf as well. It takes a whole lot to get games canceled on turf, and same with the drone shows. But yeah, they'll both be post game. I think about 5, 10, 15 minutes after the games.
Are those sometimes the fireworks shows, you can see them from other parts around town. Do you notice the drones high enough if you're within a mile or two of the ballpark? Is it worth going outside to see if maybe you can see it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we did it for the first time last year, and they go, I don't know the exact number, but I mean, it is well above the ballpark level. It's probably 100, 150 feet up. So you'll be able to see them around Eugene. So if you're looking up and like, what are these weird lights right now? And it's cool too. They're a really cool company because you can customize them to fit kind of whatever your theme night is. So a night like tonight, it's Bill Walton, it's Merry Pranksters. There's going to be some special things for that. Same then with tomorrow with it being a Disney Mickey Mouse night too. So they're customizable with, of course, all the Emeralds branding as well out there. So
what is the Bill Walton? What are fans again? How many you're giving away? What's for folks who want to come out tonight? What are they getting? And
so it's the first 1,000 fans. We it's a lot of really, really cool work that we had done on this to be able to secure it. So first 1,000 fans for a Merry Pranksters inspired Bill Walton jersey. First 1,000 fans through the gate that is here tonight. And we worked with, his camp and his foundation. We also have the Mo Lucas Foundation is out here today because they play a big part in that. So they're coming out. They're going to have a concourse table as well, throw out a first pitch, all sorts of cool things with the Mo Lucas Foundation. And they really helped kind of put this whole night together. Because obviously, we want to do cool giveaways and stuff, but it's cool to kind of have that tie-in of why we're doing it. And then, honoring Bill as well, because the Merry Pranksters, I mean, that whole ensemble, he had some run-ins over the years with them, some great stories and whatnot. So it was just the perfect tie-in to kind of do it, and we were able to pull it together over the last year or so to put this night together.
Well, that's awesome. And obviously Maurice Lucas and Bill Walton, teammates on the 76-77 Trailblazers, and best of friends there. So that's cool. I mean, you guys have hit it big with the Exploding Whales. You mentioned the oat one there. This could be another one that maybe gets a little bit of awards, or could be seen all over social media in the next couple days.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been promoting it pretty heavy, and there's it's definitely has drawn some fans out that maybe would not have previously attended an Emeralds game, or some people we've had tweets or messages. People are coming down from Portland, or people that maybe have a tie-in somehow, some way with some of these different groups. So it is just a cool way. We're always just looking for ways to kind of give recognition to different groups around Oregon, around Eugene, and just kind of around the whole Northwest, and find cool ways to tie it in.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the politics of this city, but I will say that if and when apparently it sounds like the M's are going to be leaving in a couple years, this town will not know what it's missing until it's gone, because in addition to incredible baseball for 70 years.
This is year 70.
70 years. It's been an incredible steward of this city. Alan Benavides, who left after 15 years, a good friend of mine. I don't think people, again, realize what they lost when he left. And now with Matt picking it up and you guys here, you guys always it's put on a great show. I mean, it's 70 some odd parties a year out there, and it's pretty cool. So like I say, folks, enjoy them while they're here, because we don't know, and I'm not going to get you on the spot and ask you that either, but it's unfortunately going to be an era that comes to an end soon, but we're fortunate to have you guys for another summer here too, and should be stuff. And like we say, tonight it kind of starts anew, so folks come out, and you're no longer a team that's in fourth place, you're in first place, so it's a good chance for folks to come out and kind of see the team and see what it's going to look like here in the second half of the season. Yeah,
absolutely. There's so many fun guys. I mean, Tibbs had left, but there's still so many top prospects and guys. I mean, year over year now, especially here in High A, I mean, you see guys make the jump really, really quickly now, within a year or two. So you watch guys here today, you'll see them playing for San Francisco or some team at, in the MLB. So it is really cool to watch. And there's, like I said, our whole goal is, you had mentioned being here for potentially a few more years, and it's just making every night, we're giving it our all, trying to make it the best while we're still here. And there's something for everybody at one of our games.
So you guys are here through Sunday, right? Before you hit the road. You said Saturday is Mickey Mouse night? What's the themes for Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah, so it's Mickey Mouse and Friends here tomorrow night. 5:20 is first pitch, a little bit later for our normal Saturdays because the drone show. Yep. You want it to be at least dusk out for the we've had long 3-hour games all year, and it's like, Oh, of course tomorrow. Watch. Tomorrow's going to be it's going to be a 1-run, 2-hit pitcher's duel that just absolutely zooms. But yeah, that's the promotion here for tomorrow. And then Sunday is a Monarca Sunday put on at 1:05 and a bike to the ballpark. So there's free bike valet. So if you want to bike over to the game, Matt put that together with eWeb as well. So they have a cool little thing where you can get some free helmets and all sorts of cool things if you're into to biking, and there's a free place to park your bike at the game. So fun promotions here this week, and then we're right back at it next week up in Everett, taking on the Aqua Sox, who won the first half. Yeah.
And they have a wonderful broadcaster, Pat Dillon, who's a good friend of mine. He's awesome there too. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. When you schedule these things, like you say, it could be a 2-hour game and you're in trouble. Or a few years ago, they scheduled a 4th of July game that ended up going 20-some innings, and Allen fired off those fireworks at about 2 o'clock in the morning that didn't exactly make the homeowners association in the area great. But you never know. It's a baseball game. There's no clock. This thing can end a little too soon or go a little bit late. So tonight, though, is a 6:35 start?
6:35 start,
So we would anticipate the drone show if folks are just sitting in the backyard looking up, probably 9:30-ish?
Yeah, 9:30 is probably a safe measure. I mean, we've had some hour 59 games. We had a 3-hour 40-minute game here this week as well. So I mean, 9:30 is probably right in the middle. That's fingers crossed. That's what we're going to hope for here tonight.
And just speaking as a baseball, I don't know if you could call it baseball purist, but I'm not somebody that's loved the shorter games, I have to say, and I'm sure as a broadcaster you like the shorter games sometimes, but obviously it's been a part of the game. I just wanted to ask you about just a couple players maybe, or just see what your thoughts are. Anybody, obviously Tibbs is kind of the guy that people have known, but Davidson maybe, is he the guy, or is there any other guys that you want to mention that, like, if you could look back a couple of years from now and you might look at this team and go, okay, yeah, that guy, he turned out to be a really good player? Anybody that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, Davidson is such a good one. He has such an incredible story too. This undrafted guy back in 2023. He's now, after Tibbs' departure, he's the highest ranked hitting prospect here on this team. And there was a great story shared on I believe MLB Pipeline the other day about him and just his rise, because he hadn't played baseball for a long time, and then he ends up at this small community college and he bounces around, and there was a scout that went and was actually scouting somebody else, and they saw him taking batting practice, and they were like, who's that? All right, who is this guy? Like, we got to figure this out. And then he was one, they were just like, fingers crossed, like, please nobody draft. I mean, it's down to 20 rounds now, so you get a lot less of those kind of out of nowhere draft picks. I mean, you still do. It's still so many draft picks in a year, but so he ends up not getting drafted. They sign him right away, and I mean, he is just crushed at every single level. Flown up prospect list, really became a name here in the last about year and a half, and leads almost every hitting category on our team. He's up top in so many stats in the Northwest League as well. So he's a very fun player to watch as well. A lot of power, a lot of energy out there in the batter's box. He's very animated and stuff. So he's a fun one to watch. And then on the pitching side, I would say Josh Bostic. He's a guy who actually pitched yesterday here for us. He's the top pitching prospect here now on the team as well. And he's had injuries and a few things he's dealt with this year, but there are certain pitchers, you see them throw one pitch sometimes at this level, and you're like, this guy has the stuff. Like, this guy, the way it comes out of his hands, the velocity, the location. So he's another guy that, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked in a year or two if he's, whether it's bullpen or part of the starting rotation, however it plays out, could definitely see him shoot up really, really quickly.
Awesome, man. Jacob Archer, the voice of your Eugene Emeralds, thanks so much for coming in. Folks, get out for this weekend. Like I say, the drone shows, I'm excited to see. I'll see if I can see my backyard, but the M's are at home against Vancouver Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I know it's a busy day of game prep for you. Thanks so much for coming down, absolutely. Jacob, and spending some time to chat about the M's here in town. So we're going to head to a break. We'll come back, and we'll wrap up the week here on the Danny and Justin Show on Fox Sports, Eugene and Newport. Welcome back into the Danny and Justin Show, and big thanks again to Jacob Archer for coming in and sitting in with us. Jacob's got a ball game tonight with the M's, so appreciate him coming in and give us an update on the M's as they head into the second half of the Northwest League schedule. And like I say, get out there, support your M's at home all weekend against Vancouver. So before we get into the Oregon stuff, I got to tell you, I got to give a little shout out. Went and had lunch today at Chicken Bones.
Very nice.
A friend of the program, I know, and
very much a friend.
Had the salad, 2 tenders, and a drink, and it was unbelievable. They have the best salad bar in town. It's always fresh. It's always good stuff. There's never like stuff that looks like they throw out there just to fill you up or to get you to miss something that you don't want. So anyway, that's the best salad bar in town, bar none. And that deal when you get to throw in a couple chicken tenders, which I don't know how anybody eats more than 2 chicken tenders out there. Those things are like huge and thick.
They are.
And throw in a soda, and that is more than I need for lunch. So big shout out to Chicken Bones. Appreciate the folks out there. Always the best customer service. Every time I go in there,
they're great.
Somebody's got a smile. Hey, how's it going, bud? What can I do for you? This and that.
Yeah, we love Chicken Bones.
Yeah.
Love Chicken Bones.
Yes. So anyway, good lunch out there today at Chicken Bones. So U of O news. So yesterday we talked about Brandon Arrington as one that got away. It was the 5-star defensive back who committed to Texas A&M over Oregon. And, of course, hours later, Oregon gets Jet Washington. Jet is a 6'5" safety who has now committed to Oregon, has some family ties to Kobe Bryant. So I know Oregon fans, like I say, we talked about yesterday, there's all this frustration. All these big 5-stars are going other places. Don't worry, folks. Oregon can still get some 5-stars. And Jet Washington comes in, and he fits the profile that you love in a college football player.
Yeah, I love a tall defensive back. I mean, nothing gets me more excited. I mean, Sione Laulea on Oregon's team, I remember he came over and he was a community college guy or what's it called? The lower level JUCO. There you go. That's what I'm forgetting. He was a JUCO guy, but just the fact that he's 6'4" just gets me excited. And so it's the same thing with Jet Washington, which again, Oregon's winning the name thing with. You have Bryson Beaver, and you have Jet Washington, and then you have Messiah Hampton, the receiver out of New York. So, no, Jet Washington, I think this is a really interesting signing. It sounds like he can play over the top and in the box and in the slot, which is like, can you imagine a 6'5" slot, I guess, nickel corner? Like, that's pretty insane to have a guy that big playing that position. He really looks like a wide receiver out there playing defensive back. So I think that sort of length can just be really impactful. I'm not sure how college ready he is, but that seems like the type of player that could transition fairly easily if they have that sort of body. So I'm excited. I mean, I don't usually get really, really excited over guys that are complete unknowns because that's what these high school prospects are ultimately. But I'm really excited about him. Plus, you mentioned he's Kobe's nephew, so that's something that Oregon Twitter will certainly run with for sure. Yeah, and it's interesting. If you remember, Kobe was pretty close with the Oregon women's basketball program because of him and Sabrina. His daughter and him went to a lot of games. I think a lot of people feel like if the crash never happens, his daughter probably ends up becoming a Division I player, and Oregon might have been the spot. Or UConn, but I think Oregon had a real tie there. So it's interesting to see a legacy of Kobe Bryant come to Oregon because I think people thought that might have happened if not for the tragedy there. It's interesting, and I'm just writing this down. Like you mentioned, it's Brandon Beavers is the quarterback. Who I saw actually today, Andrew Nemec, who's up in Portland and a recruiting guy, he projected today that he will sign with Oregon. Sounds like he's visiting Oregon this weekend. He projected him to sign. Ryder Lyons is the quarterback who is committing next week, and they could have both those. You could next year for Oregon, when you could have Lions, Beavers, and Washington on the roster, and your schedule faces Washington, the Beavers, and the Nittany Lions. We could have 3 teams with a player's name on it. But this is why they pay you the big dumb bucks, little facts, Steve, that I could come up with. These are the dumb little facts that I come up with. But I did say today that like I say, Beaver, it sounds like this could be a big weekend for Oregon and quarterbacks. Beavers, who's currently a Boise State commit, I believe, or maybe decommitted, but was at one point committed to Boise State, is in town. If you're listening, Mr. Beavers, welcome to Eugene. And could be a big weekend for him. Like I say, Andrew Nemec up in Portland has projected him to sign with Oregon. And then Ryder Lyons, I think it's on Tuesday, is going to make his announcement. So a lot going on there in the Oregon recruiting world. And I think it's interesting. We've talked about this a little bit yesterday with the quarterback situation that, like, in an ideal world, what is your timeline for Oregon's quarterback situation? Because you obviously want Dante Moore this season, probably. I mean, we're Novosad. We can't really assume, I guess. But you want a guy that's here and kind of been here for a year or two to take. Do you want it just this season? Do you think maybe you can have it this season and next season for Dante Moore? Because Dante could go in the draft, right? I mean, if he was so he could leave, and so that leaves next year where you have maybe Novosad sticks around. You have Achilles Smith Jr. You mentioned Bryson Beaver. Yeah, Moga. So, like, ideally, you just have too many guys to play one position, honestly.
Which is the one position where that rarely happens because you do see transfers. Now, again, Novosad's been, I know Danny's golf buddy, Austin Novosad, has been one of the few who has stuck around, and like I say, I think there's a competition there. I think you project Dante Moore, but I think there's a competition there. Like you say, then you've got Akili and Moga. So you like to have kind of one in each class. It's just tough to do, especially when you're recruiting the level of quarterbacks Oregon's getting, because we saw it in the Cal kid who came in and looked around and said, okay, I may not play here for a while. I'm going back down to Cal. It's just tough to keep that many in the room. Last year, Oregon was really fortunate to have Dylan Gabriel and to have a Dante Moore. They didn't need to go to him as a backup, but they had a backup who had major Power 5 experience type situation. Not the case this year. If it's Dante, they won't have a backup with that, but I think they'd have capable ones. So I think in that quarterback room, you're just always trying to get one. And you mentioned Lyons could take a mission, so that could change kind of what year he comes in. So that's why
he really makes sense because of that, I think.
Yeah, and if you see Beavers commit this weekend and Lions on Tuesday, and people think, oh, that's weird, it might be, again, because of the mission part of things there. So I think you typically want to have kind of like I say, one in each class.
Right, and how much of it is a guy like Bryson Beaver sitting there and looking at all of these other quarterbacks and saying, okay, well, if Ryder Lyons commits, then maybe he's going to be there next year. But like, does Bryson Beaver sit there and go, well, I'm going to get 2 years at Oregon just to be underneath some of these guys and develop at Oregon, and then I'll go start somewhere else? Like, I'm just not sure exactly. So, I mean, I'm sure all these guys think that they can
you want
start
all these guys to come in and think they can do it.
I'm sure they think they can.
I'm sure Austin Novosad's still here because he thinks he can win it. I don't think Austin Novosad's here thinking, I'm just happy to be the backup. I think Novosad comes back and says, hey, I think I can win this job. I've been in the system longer than him. And that's what you want as the quarterback. You
Absolutely.
want 4 guys who think they're the best. Now, you also want 4 guys who can realize that, hey, if I'm not the one starting, the opportunity may come a little bit later type thing, and don't be the one who's just out the door right away. But I think that's what you want in that job.
Well, I'll never forget. I mean, talk about college quarterbacks, and Oregon fans will be very familiar. I will never forget, what was it, the 2015 Ohio State team?
On their 4th quarterback when they won it.
Well,
Cardale
I was
Jones.
On the other side of it because I was following Wisconsin back then, and so got to the championship game in the Big Ten and had no idea how good zero idea how good Cardale Jones was, and then he was phenomenal, and that was their you said their 4th quarterback, I think it was.
It was J.T. Barrett, and then there was another one that
Braxton
went down,
Miller.
Braxton Miller, and him. Well, Oregon had Chip Kelly's first year. Jeremiah Masoli was the 5th string quarterback, and just guys dropped, and he ends up getting the job and takes it over, and then leads him to the Rose Bowl.
You really can never have too many quarterbacks. I mean, never forget Nick Foles winning the Super Bowl for the Eagles. I mean, that's obviously the pro game, but you could just never, ever have too many quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, so that would be there for Oregon. Last thing before we go, James Crepia, another friend of the program, friend of mine, reported today that Rob Mullins is going to be getting a 3-year contract extension at Oregon. I would say kudos to that move. I think it's pretty impressive if you look through what Rob Mullins has done here. That's not a position. That's a position where, and I've told Rob this before, often after 5 or 6 years, you're looking to go somewhere else because it's just impossible to keep a fan base happy that long. Rob's more than a decade now, I think more than a dozen years now, and really has done a remarkable job of kind of building this. If you talk to folks in the athletic department, they will tell you the leadership he brings, and it's not people who are on the record and have to say nice things. I just ask people randomly, hey, how is it in there? And they just say, hey, I would never leave this place just because I don't think I can go find a guy who's a better leader than Rob. So, like I say, he'd always been good to me in the media. I've gotten a chance to get to know him a little bit in the last couple of years. His son, Cooper's played for the Springfield Drifters. I've done some stories on them, so I've seen Rob out at the ballpark and been able to kind of chat away from things. But when I saw that and him getting a raise in a couple of years, I think it said he's still like the 8th highest paid AD in the Big Ten. If that's the case, it's a steal for Oregon because he is certainly better than the 8th best AD. Yeah. But again, you look at what he's done, it's impossible to run a program that big and have so much success and everything and really avoid many slip-ups, screw-ups, or things that has the fan base on your tail, and to keep all the boosters happy. Rob Mullins has done an incredible job of keeping staff, boosters, fans, everybody who often are coming with different expectations and different needs, and yet you talk to anybody in any sort of that circle, and they all respect Rob. So kudos to him for the work he's done, and I was glad to see James' story today. I think Rob's a guy also who his next job, I don't think he's the guy who's leaving for another AD job. He is probably an executive somewhere in college sports, something. He's the kind of guy, I don't see him going school to school type. He's the guy who I think if he ever leaves Oregon probably goes into sort of an upper office type thing, and
it keeps going up.
Yeah, and maybe goes and works for the NCAA. But the NCAA may not even be along by the time Rob Mullins leaves here. But so anyway, kudos to Oregon for wrapping up Rob Mullins for 3 more years, and kudos to Rob for the job he's done at Oregon. I think Oregon fans know how fortunate they are to have a guy like that running that department. All right, that's going to wrap up the weekend. But like I said, we have extended my stay for one more day. Back Monday to compare our NBA championship predictions. You've got the Pacers. I have the Thunder. We'll see how that one turns out. We'll have a guest on Monday. We're still trying to finalize that, but I think we'll have one who may be able to have some NBA talk with us as well. So thanks for having me on the last 2 days, Justin. I appreciate it.
Of course. We'll have you back Monday.
All right, sounds good. Filling in for Danny, this is Steve Mims. You're listening to the Danny and Justin Show on Fox Sports.